Welcome back to another edition of Havlicek Stole the Pod. I am your host, Alex Goldberg. With me, as always, is Dr. Justin Quinn. We have an absolutely loaded pod for you today. We're going to be breaking down what the Celtics have been up to, as well as get into some draft stuff. It is March Madness. The tournament is in full swing. I'm going to be watching a bunch of different basketball games at the same time tonight, including the Celtics playing the Hawks and all of the NCAA March Madness on my second screen. We're locked in with Bryan Kalbrosky. Bryan, welcome. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. It's an annual tradition to talk to y'all. So always a pleasure to be with you and to come back and enjoy these conversations.
Love having you, man.
Always a pleasure. And Bryan, if you want to watch NCAA tournament games with me later tonight at Westbury and in Prospect Park, feel free to swing by. They got really good French fries there. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a hike, but whatever. We'll make it work. JQ, how's things going in Mexico City?
Well, they decided to change the electrical cord to my house right when we were going to pod. So it's actually good that we had to kick it down the can today. So pretty good, I guess.
All right, we'll take that. Cool. All right, well, we have a lot to get into, so we're going to just go right away. First off, we should probably talk about the Boston Celtics and what they've been up to since we last recorded.
Oh, no. We're going to do the news last, actually.
We're going to do the news last. Fine, then we won't talk about that. We'll just get right into draft stuff. And then, so if that's the case, we're going to go right off the bat. Bryan, the name is Havlicek Stole the Pod, and as is the case with all of our guests, you're going to get a chance to steal the pod right off the bat here. Take it in any direction you want to talk about. It can be about college basketball, pro basketball, the Boston Celtics, what you had for breakfast this morning, what the weather's like. You can do whatever you want with this segment. It can be a rant. It can be a question. It can be you just, talking shop with whatever. Take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just going directly topical into the NBA draft lottery odds news of the day, Shams Charania reported today after a press conference earlier this week with Adam Silver and reporters that essentially they're looking to get rid of tanking in the NBA, which is just an ongoing conversation that has been kind of at the forefront of what we've been talking about with the NBA and the bottom half of the NBA for, since they've changed the odds last time. And then before that as well. And I think that the new solutions that Shams floated today that, the NBA leaked to him don't really do anything to change the actual problem. And I think what we're essentially doing now with those solutions would be rewarding the middle and basically at the end of the day, whatever situation that involves a draft and having talented players coming into the league, you're going to do whatever you can to get those players onto your roster because that's the best way to find all-star talent. That's the best way to breed development. Obviously, the Celtics, have been able to build a team, both through their stars of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown that they got through the draft. And many of the teams around the league have been fairly similar. You're not seeing as many free agency changeovers as you used to. The trades that we're seeing are usually players that people don't want anymore. The guys that were traded at the deadline this year, big names like Trae Young and what have you. I guess even the Wizards also got Anthony Davis. We're assets that we're not exactly at peak value. The players that you want at peak value are going to be the guys on the rookie scale contracts coming into the league at 18, 19, 20 years old. And I think that realistically, so long as the draft exists and so long as all of the incentives to get the highest pick possible exist, people are going to do what they can to do that. And so if that means that a team that's going to be, in sixth can tank their way into 10th, they might do that. And just generally speaking, I don't see how any solution could really change the ability for teams to intentionally lose to get better positioning for the highest draft pick possible. Because when a guy like Victor Wembanyama is available, you're going to do what you can to get Victor Wembanyama. When a guy like Cooper Flag is available, you're going to do what you can to get Cooper Flag. And ultimately, I don't think that tanking is as bad of an issue as everyone talks about. And I think that, in any competitive sport, there are going to be winners and losers. Teams have to lose games. Like, there's nothing you can do about the fact that some teams just aren't going to win as many games as others. Like, that's the way a schedule works. Not every team is going to be 500. And so, for a team to be 800, there's probably going to be a team that's about 200 in their record as well. And I think that that's just going to be a self-sufficient, like, it's just going to be, a cycle that will continue forever, unless the draft turns into free agency or they get rid of the lottery altogether and do a different system. But those are both kind of marquee events, the lottery and the draft.
Yeah, they're not going to do
both
that.
both, and also just to bring in the labor element of it. I do think that a lot of it comes down to suppressing rookie wages, because if we put Victor Wembanyama on the open market, you're going to have a contract as big as LeBron James is getting, and they don't want to do that, because one of the best ways that you can actually keep luxury costs down and salary caps down is rookie scale contracts. And I think that rookie scale contracts can also be very protective, right? Because what if the Golden State Warriors spent everything they could with a guaranteed contract on James Wiseman? That would have potentially ruined the franchise. So it is also, checks and balances system that exists for the team's benefit as well. But they're never going to get rid of the draft. They're never going to get rid of the draft lottery, because one, they're marquee TV events, and two, they're also just marquee events for the league, because you can make up for the TV events with one extra playoff game. You'll get just as many viewers. It's not the TV money, but they love having everybody come to meet in Chicago and have like a convention of sorts, like have everybody there and kind of have a celebration of the league. So I just don't think that there's a solution.
You brought up a few points here that I want to jump on, because I think this is, you hit the nail on the head as far as my frustration regarding these tanking reforms. Justin and I were talking about this earlier in just like our group chat separately, but the big thing that nobody is talking about with regard to the tanking reforms and the initiative around it is that until you fundamentally alter the CBA and change the rules around draft pick protections, restricted free agency, trades, all of that, to your point, there is still nothing in the NBA that is more valuable than an elite all-star, all-NBA level player on a rookie contract. And absolutely none of these reforms can change that. And as long as that is the most valuable thing in the NBA that any team could ever acquire, teams are going to go through hell and high water to do that. Victor Wembanyama is the perfect example. The Spurs have a legitimate title shot this year while Victor Wembanyama is on his rookie deal. That there's nothing that is more valuable than that right now. And every team that isn't trying to do that, that isn't already, part of a handful of 3 or 4 established title contenders that have a window right now, if you're not trying to do that, then to some degree, you're kind of playing a losing game, right? Unless you're truly one move away from title contention. And I don't think there's that many teams that are, with the current CBA being the way that is. There's just nothing in the world that's more valuable than that in the NBA right now. The second most valuable thing that you can have in the NBA is all-star, all-NBA level players that are locked into an all-NBA level contract, but a bench full of rookie contracts that can give you productive minutes, like what the Thunder and the Celtics are doing. So there's always going to be incentive towards drafting and hitting on available and cost-controlled draft picks. And until you change the structure of the CBA, until you, unless you make it like a soccer transfer portal where teams can literally just bid whatever they want on anybody with no restrictions, there's pretty much no way to effectively do tanking reform in any meaningful sense. You can kind of play with the margins a little bit, and I think that's what the NBA is trying to do to avoid like the truly egregious examples of tanking, where it's like the Brooklyn Nets are just like, sitting all of their players in the fourth quarter to try and, intentionally lose a game. But even then, it's not going to eliminate tanking entirely. And nobody in the league, as far as ownership and really even the players union, has that much of an appetite to radically alter the CBA and the terms of CBA on that level. It's just kind of it's not that it's a non-issue, because I am cognizant of like fans paying money to see games who want to see competitive basketball. It's not that it's a non-issue. It's that the owners and the players union, through the CBA and through previous CBAs, have collectively agreed that they don't care enough about it to actually do anything other than cosmetic changes. And so it's not going to happen with anything other than cosmetic changes. I'm glad you brought this up, because I think that's my thoughts on the anti-tanking measures broadly as they've been proposed.
Your point about bad ownership groups like the Chicago Bulls are perfectly happy to sit in the treadmill of mediocrity because they can make plenty of money in their market and they're happy about it.
Yeah. Anyway, very interesting stuff. Great place to start things off. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'm really concerned too about the possibility of the NBA trying to make some of these changes and actually making the problem significantly worse. Like the middle one strikes me as like, let's just take more years, right? Like it could actually make the problem even more. Like if it's such a bad issue, just take a year, a full season, and put some more time into this and think it through. Because to Brian's point, until you break the connection between losing bad in the regular season and getting those rewards, it's never going to change. So like, I like the COLA idea. It's too complicated. They need to simplify it. Something like that could work. If you are not familiar, it's basically just some like 10-year span where like you get more lotto balls based on like how far you've been in the playoffs or not, or I got that backwards. You get less if you've been in the postseason. The further you go in the postseason, you get less, and the length of time you've been out of the postseason is what gives you more lottery odds, basically. Something like that could work. Not necessarily that, but like even that, which is I think one of the best proposals I've heard, is just like it's so poorly written that everyone's just like, I can't understand this. So they need to come up with something that breaks that connection and is like legible to common people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just end on this by saying that I don't think the current system's that bad. Like you talk about the gate problems of, ticket revenue for losing franchises. At the end of the day, I don't think fans of teams that are doing poorly are that upset at having cheaper games for a little bit, nor do they not understand what's going on. Like they're fully cognitive of this situation here. Like they're not idiots. Like they know, like, hey, if we lose this game, we have a better chance to add Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, any of the top players in this draft, Ade Debinsta. Like it doesn't matter who we're talking about. Like they would rather do that than be the Chicago Bulls. Like the Chicago Bulls, who never have a chance at anything because they're both not a winning team, nor are they like a lottery team that's like toward the top. Like there's just no incentive for either in that end. And so it's just I think that the fans know what they're getting. It's like for a couple of years we get cheap seats and then we get to root for some really, really fun young players. The Thunder did that, and the Thunder got out of it some incredible players that they were able to use, their draft assets. Because you talked about the most important things in the league is, cheap contracts being one of them. Another pick is another thing that's valuable is draft picks. So, everybody understands the game that we're playing right now, and it's pretty simple. Like I think they know it's not flattened odds, but they understand the basic premise. And I think that what it comes down to is like really the season's a little bit too long. And I think that it's like, well, we're not going to risk one of our guys tearing his Achilles and missing the entire season when we're already statistically eliminated, when there's a better chance for us to get a better pick. So everyone knows the game we're playing right now. Everyone's on the same page, and a couple teams okay, so Jaren Jackson is maybe getting some elective surgery instead of some mandatory surgery he probably could have done in the offseason. Maybe Yusuf Nurkic. I think Yusuf Nurkic was getting nose surgery. That one probably could have waited if he was playing for a contender. But across the board, like it's like no one in Utah is that upset. AJ DeVansville went to Utah Prep for high school and went to BYU for college. They're like, yeah, Jaren Jackson, sit down. Like, we want AJ. Like, it'd be better for us to have AJ to pair with Keontae George, who we also got by being the losing franchise. Like, we love this. Like, this is good for us. Sure. So I don't know. And also, like, some of the tanking teams that exist right now, like, made winning moves. Like the Wizards, who are like egregious, traded for Trae Young and Anthony Davis. Like, the Jazz traded for Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, how egregious are teams really being right now if they're not trading away players but trading for players? So I don't know. I just think it's a non-issue.
Agreed.
Well, so let's get into then some of the hopes that these teams might have as far as players that they could be drafting and what makes the tanking all worth it for so many of these fan bases, as well as where the Celtics fall into that. Obviously, the Celtics, many expected them to participate in a mini tank this year. They did exactly the opposite. They now have the 4th best record in the NBA, and as such are likely to be picking around 27. It depends a little bit on where they finish relative to like the Knicks and a couple other teams, but that it feels like they're going to be in that 27 spot, and then they're going to have around the 40th draft pick in the 2nd round. So we're going to start at the top of the draft. The kind of the big names, the ones that the Celtics will not be getting in all likelihood unless they make some big old trades. But we'll start here, and then we'll kind of go into guys that the Celtics might be a little bit more around. And Brad Stevens has admittedly said he's pretty excited about some of the guys that are going to be around that pick. But let's start off at the top. So first off, AJ DeVansville had an absolutely outstanding single NCAA tournament game before BYU was eliminated. AJ was incredible. He got basically no help of any kind. But a lot of people, just from that one game, what they saw has now put him at the top of most of the mocks that I have seen up to this point. Is AJ in his own tier to you, Brian? Is he just floating above all, or is this a little bit more of a conversation?
Yeah, AJ is not in his own tier. I do think that AJ should be the consensus favorite right now for number 1 overall. And AJ would be beneficial and helpful to any team in the league. Absolutely, no doubt in my mind. But I also think that AJ is in a historic draft class that includes Darren Peterson and Cameron Boozer and, other players who are also very special as well. And in fact, in my most recent mock draft that I published yesterday, while I had AJ number 1 in the one from earlier this month during Selection Sunday, my Sweet 16 mock draft did not have AJ going number 1, the one that USA Today published yesterday. That one had Cameron Boozer at number 1. And I think it really will be quite team dependent. Cameron Boozer, statistically speaking, had maybe the best college season, or is currently still enjoying maybe the best college season we've ever seen from a prospect, especially a freshman age prospect, especially an 18-year-old freshman age prospect who's coming off of winning, championships all through high school, as well as, Gatorade Player of the Year multiple times. Cameron Boozer's been one of the best players in the country and one of the best prospects in the country for quite a long time now. And I think that the reason why I had Cameron Boozer at number 1 is I read in the Stein line from Jake Fisher that the Pacers view him as the missing piece. Like rival executives, according to Jake Fisher, think that Cameron Boozer would slot in there better. I think that if you think about that roster with Halliburton, Nembhard, Siakam, and Zubac, Cameron Boozer can be that connective glue who can do a little bit of everything at a very high level and contribute to winning for a contender. Now, AJ, I think, will go number 1 to a lot of teams. AJ, I think in his tournament game, every single bucket he had was unassisted, which is crazy. And I think he also outscored all of his teammates as well. But he was doing that all season. AJ led the nation in unassisted points this year as a freshman. Like, he is able to create his own basket at 6'9", like nobody's business. Like, he is a very special scorer. But for a team like the Pacers, who have several guys on their team who can already score already, do they really want somebody who's creating unassisted buckets like that? Or would it be better to go for someone who's more, elite connective tissue, several-time all-star connective tissue? I think that with the number one pick in every draft, you draft the best player available. But I think for certain teams, Cameron Boozer will be the best player available. And I think for certain teams, Darren Peterson is the best player available. I think that all of them are in their own tier there. And I think that it really comes down to what your talent evaluation looks like, and also how those interviews go and how well they get along with, the front offices and what those conversations look like. I mean, like, listen, I think that if I were to bet on it, I would say more teams would probably want AJ as their number one pick, but I don't think that it's a lock, and I still think that Darren Peterson's in the race, and I think that Cameron Boozer, who's often projected at 3, could absolutely go as high as number 1, and I think that this draft has 5 or 6 players who would have gone number 1 in the 2024 NBA draft, like genuinely, like without a doubt. Like it's really special in that way.
Yeah. So Justin and I projected the 3 guys that we kind of like the most, and we both agreed that Dybantsa and Boozer are our top 2 guys. And we both had Dybantsa slightly over Boozer, but I think to your point about fit, it really does make a difference when you have 2 players as good as AJ and Cameron Boozer, respectively. I've been watching a lot of the Duke games, both because I have Duke winning my bracket and also because I'm just interested to see what Boozer looks like. And he just looks like such a kind of perfect, malleable, like do it all kind of player. Like the comp I see is like, what if Kevin Love could play defense consistently, which is, I mean, that's an incredible basketball player if you make that work. So that's a guy who could help a lot of teams. Super polished, super professional. Another guy that I've really had my eye on because I just am addicted to guards with elite first step is Kingston Flemings. I've been looking at him a lot. Just the raw end-to-end burner speed is so tantalizing if you're looking for just like a young athletic point guard who can beat anybody off the dribble. The De'Aaron Fox comparison I'm really interested in. But that's a guy that I would have my eyes on. Justin, you've been looking at Acuff a lot. You had a question related to this as well.
Yeah, I just don't get why he is ranked as low as he is in a lot of mocks that I've seen. He looks like a guy who maybe he's not top 5. I don't know the other guys who are floating around in that range as well. But he reminds me of Kemba Walker, but with the ability to play among bigs near the basket in a way that Kemba had to learn how to do in the NBA. And he looks like he already has that down. So I don't understand why he's not ranked higher than he is.
Yeah, I mean, Acuff is one of the most talented offensive guard prospects we've ever seen, like undoubtedly. And he is one of those players who I think would have gone number 1 overall in 2024 or a weaker draft class. He is a special scorer near the rim. He's also an incredible playmaker. He can score well from either side of the court. He's able to do a lot of things as a playmaker. He's one of the best lob threat throwers in college basketball. Just across the board, like he checks a lot of boxes for what he can bring to an NBA team right away. In the first year of his NBA deal. The reason why he's not considered top 4 or 5 right now is 1, talented class. 2, and this one needs to be highlighted and underlined, he will walk into the NBA as the worst defensive player in the NBA. Like, and I say that in a way that I'm sure he must have to understand about himself. Like, he was giving up buckets to High Point, which is barely even a mid-major, like nobody's business. The lack of effort that he has on the defense, I wouldn't even say he's a bad defender. He doesn't really even try. And so, like, I would love to know what he looked like. Like, listen, if he was like slapping the hardwood and locking in and then just getting beat, I'd be like, that's a bad defender. Like, why like he's trying his absolute hardest and he can't stop a fly. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is his guy, he's like not even 8 feet from his guy on most possessions. Like, you can eat him alive. And in a league where Trae Young just got traded for CJ McCollum, like the corpse of CJ McCollum, Like, Trae Young is one of the most talented offensive basketball players in the NBA. And Trae Young could consistently only lead his team to be 500, basically, and a play-in team, basically, because he gave up as many points on the other end of the court. And look at the Utah Jazz, for example. They simply can't draft Acuff. They have Keontae George, who is currently one of the worst defensive players in the NBA. And I think Keontae George is a better defender than Acuff. You can't have a backcourt of Keontae George and Darius Acuff. You'd have to pick one. And they'll probably go with the one who's got more proven ability in the NBA, and Keontae George. And there's several NBA teams where their point guard is not very good at defense, or their shooting guard's not very good at defense. So unless you have certain players around him, you just can't have. He's just like, you can't really have him on your board. You just can't. Now I have him going at 6 to the Dallas Mavericks. I think that Cooper Flagg would probably make up for a lot of the defensive issues. Cooper Flagg can switch and can guard, 1 through 4, pretty easily. And I think that there are other teams that would make a lot of sense for Acuff as well. I would love him in Atlanta next to Dyson Daniels. That would be awesome. Like, Dyson Daniels would immediately make up for a lot of the deficiencies that Acuff has. Now, I think that Acuff could be a very talented offensive player and likely will be a very talented offensive player. But we know that Trae Young is an elite offensive player, like, absolutely, undeniably, and he still got dumped. We know that Cam Thomas is a pretty elite offensive player, and he's not even in the league anymore. Like, we have to assume that Acuff is levels above Cam Thomas to think that he's worth picking in the top 5. And granted, I do think he probably is levels above Cam Thomas because he's a much better playmaker. So I don't want to compare him to Cam Thomas, but players who are only playing on offense and giving up as many points on defense just don't have the same value that they once did.
I mean, we saw that very closely with Anthony Simons. And to all of you who are doing your own research on the draft out there, this is why you need to do more than watch the highlight reels, because that's all I had time for. And guess how much defense they put in those.
Yeah, and I also just want to say that, like, his defensive metrics, if for those of you who don't have time to watch highlight reels or film or whatever like that, his defensive box plus minus is lower than all of those prospects we just mentioned. He has a negative defensive box plus minus, like Trae Young and guys like that, where at least low
treading
positive.
water.
Yeah, they were treading water. He is a negatively impactful defensive player. Not only when you talk about like value above replacement player, which is like generally kind of like the idea behind sabermetrics in baseball, and kind of wins above replacement player, things like that. Like, he's so much lower than replacement player. Like, his box plus minus on defense is genuinely atrocious. And I don't think it's necessarily due to a lack of talent, but what if he starts locking in on defense and that exerts some of his energy on offense that he can't do anymore? And now he's just kind of a middling player. Like, it takes a lot of effort to put in all that time on both sides of the ball. So that's where I stand with Acuff.
Love it.
No, that makes sense. And this is why we have Bryan on to do the expert draft analysis that JQ and I, as NBA heads, just really are not all that well equipped to do. So we're going to go into some other guys that kind of make up the late lottery to middle draft portion. These are guys that, in a world where Brad Stevens starts to get a little spicy and starts to think about, piling draft picks together and maybe sending out young players, trying to reach up in the lottery and grab or to the middle of the draft and, grab a different player who might be not available at their current projected pick of 27. These are some guys we have our eyes on. But before we do that, Bryan, why is it important for Celtics fans to know the names of the middle of the draft guys?
I'll start with one that's actually not even optimistic, just that it's factual. This draft, after probably 5 or 6, is sort of dealer's choice in a lot of ways in terms of how a team evaluates you. One team might have a guy at 7 that other teams have at 23, and they'll pick him at 7. And I think that there's a lot of guys who have not really separated themselves enough Like, in fact, like the guy I put in, and I think we'll talk about him. The guy I have going to the Celtics in my most recent mock was a 5-star consensus All-American coming out of high school, and I see him falling a little bit. And so we can get into that in a little bit, but I think that there will be players who mock drafts have currently at 12, 13, 14 that could be available in the 20s because a team might like guys in the 20s that they pick at 12. Because, there's a couple of guys, for example, that I like in this draft. Joshua Jefferson at Iowa State is one of them. Cameron Carr at Baylor is another. Just some guys who are kind of like sort of in that middle tier of players who I really like Alan Graves at Santa Clara. There's a few guys like that I have that way, but maybe teams don't have them there, or maybe other teams agree with me and do have them there, and that would make other guys have to fall. And so every time I've done a mock draft this cycle, I've kind of gotten to a point where I've been like, okay, this guy's a top 15 talent, like Christian Anderson at Texas Tech, for example. I think is a lottery level talent, and I've never had him in the lottery of any of my mock drafts. To the point, by the way, where Christian Anderson might go back to school because Texas Tech offers a lot of money, and NIL is very rich. Like, there's a lot of money in NIL, especially for someone who we know is going to be good. You can give it to a freshman, but it's more of a gamble. Look at Kentucky with the big man from Arizona State, Jaden Quinton's. Like, he played like 10 minutes for Kentucky this year, and they gave him a huge bag to recover from injury over there. And he's going to declare, and it's going to be one of those things where Kentucky just spent NIL on nothing. Christian Anderson's more of a sure thing, and Texas Tech fans already love him. Like, you can give Christian Anderson a ton of money, and he might decide, like, well, maybe I'll come back to school. And same goes for other programs, for other guys who are sort of on that fringe, because the way that the rookie scale contract works is with each pick, it goes lower and lower and lower in terms of what you make. And NIL, you kind of start to get to a point where it's pretty equivalent. I think that we saw this last year with the Axel Lendeborg. He was potentially a lottery level talent, but Michigan, I think, gave him more money to go play for a team that very well could win the championship this year. And he withdrew from the draft and decided to go back to school and transfer to Michigan because the money was better. Like, realistically, like any time that the money is better, like, your agent who's getting a percentage of your money is going to do what's in his or her best interest as well, and encourage them to pursue the financially beneficial route. And so I think just across the board, there are guys who could easily fall in this draft because they're so talented. And so guys who you might see as consensus guys around 14, 15 could actually easily be available when the Celtics are on the clock at round 26 or whatever the pick is right now.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those guys. We have listed here, Yaxel is one of the guys we have listed here. Just outstanding 23-year-old from Michigan. He can shoot, he can pass, he can defend, he throws down some monster dunks, 6'9", 235 pounds. We also have Chris Sinek Jr. From Houston, 19 years old, 6'11", 240 pounds, rebounds, defends, Kareem Lopez, who we have as well, 19, 6'8", 220, incredible defender with real scoring potential, albeit the three might be a little dicey. And then we also have Braden Burris at Arizona, 20 years old, 6'4", 205 pounds. Very good defender, very good three-point shooter, good rebounder, and three-level scorer. So of any of those guys, or of any guys that you have in this kind of mid zone, like the middle of the draft, who should Celtics fans be looking out for as possible targets in case Brad Stevens wants to get a little spicy?
Remind me the names one more time, just so I make sure that I'm
we have
correctly.
We have Yaxel, Chris Sinek Jr., Kareem Lopez, and Braden Burris in this area.
So I think you can cross Braden Burris right off that list. He is somebody that I have as kind of a top 10 lock at this point. And I think if Arizona wins another game or two, he's going to only continue to rise. I think that he would be a genuinely wonderful fit for any team. He's done very well for himself, even with a low usage rate. And in college. I think that, he was a stud in California in high school. He's been a stud at Arizona. Just everything that he's succeeded at every level. So I don't see a scenario where he's there. Kareem Lopez absolutely could be there. He's an international player, so I think that he's a little bit more of an unknown, and there's not that many international players in this class. And so we'll see what that looks like. But, comparing his body of work to in the Australia NBL, and he would be the first, Justin, he would be the first Mexican prospect born to play in the NBA, which is going to be exciting. But I think he's more of a mystery box just because right now we have across the board sort of more one-to-one comparisons for these players. A lot of, if you look at the Illinois basketball team, which has been great, by the way, the whole team is like former professional players from the Balkan region. Like they have several players who are playing for like Mega Basket in Serbia, the same program that produced the likes of Nikola Jokic, who instead of continuing to play with Mega Basket, then came over from Serbia to play for Illinois basketball. Brad Underwood has done a hilariously good job at recruiting, these Eastern European prospects, including Peja Stojakovic's son, Andres Stojakovic, who transferred twice before getting there. The funny thing about Andres is that he actually can do everything but shoot threes. Like that's kind of his biggest weakness, even though that was his father's biggest strength. But that's beside the point. I think that Kareem, because he's more of an unknown quantity, could certainly be available there in the 20s. I think that Yaxel, I would be surprised to see him still there. But at the same time, it wouldn't shock me because he is certainly, I think he'll be the oldest player selected in the first round. And that makes a difference. I think that teams don't always really want to see that. So I think among like real prospects, like guys who are expected to hear their name early, like he is one of the oldest. He'll be nearly 24 on draft night, which is several years older than most. And we've seen that sort of not work out in the past. Chris Duarte, who was a pretty old lottery pick, flamed out of the league really fast, even though he was a very good player coming out of college. And so I think that generally speaking, I have him as a top 10 pick right now myself, but I would also, he would not be someone that would surprise me if he started to fall a little bit because of how old he is. But I think he contributes to winning at such a high level, and has contributed to winning at such a high level at Michigan that I don't see it being a detrimental problem to him. And then Kristanek Jr., I think absolutely could be available in that range. In fact, that's the player that I have currently mocked to the Celtics in my most recent mock draft. Now, I think Kristanek is a very prime candidate to go back to school. And if I were advising him, I think he should go back to school. Now, based on his exit press last night following Houston's elimination, it does not seem like Kristanek Jr. is going back to school. I think he'll at least test the draft waters, and maybe he'll get excited about it and decide to stay in the draft. And I think that his body of work is just simply not as good as the other players projected in the first round. His potential is certainly great. He has a lot of really unteachable, unique skills, and I think that he can be a genuinely fascinating prospect. But he's sort of a gamble at this point. He had a very up and down season. He actually looked fairly good during the first couple games of the tournament. So he's getting hot, or he was getting hot rather, before the elimination at the right time. But I just think his analytical profile in general just doesn't compare to any of the other players that'll be in his draftable range. Now, if he comes out in the combine and he puts up, ungodly numbers for a big man, and he, shoots more like a wing during, workouts, and he interviews extremely well, and if a team gives him a promise, he's not going back to school. He'll stay in the draft. But that's there's a lot of ifs there. So I could see of any player falling at this point in my projection, he would be the one of the top freshmen that I could see falling the most. That being said, another player who it's like, if you told me a team falls in love with him in the lottery, I'm like, I get it, because he's got a pretty unique skill set.
Sure. All right, so let's do this. We've got 3 kind of categories that we've broken down the remaining picks into. We've got bigs, we've got wings, and we've got ball handlers. We'll start with bigs, and we'll just talk about some guys that are floating in that 26, 27, 28 range that Celtics fans
or later.
might want to.
Some of them way later, but yeah.
Yeah. And some of them are later. Yeah, definitely. We'll start with bigs, then we'll move to wings, and then we'll close with ball handlers. Thinking being that Brad Stevens doesn't really necessarily have he's not a draft for fit guy. He's a best player available guy, and that seems to be pretty consistently the case. So really any one of these guys, depending on if the Celtics like them, could be there. But a few we have highlighted include Henri Vessar from UNC, 22 years old, 7 feet tall, 225 pounds. He's mobile. He can shoot from 3. He's a very good defender. He can protect the rim. He's got some passing juice. We have Terrace Reed Jr. From UConn, 22. Justin getting his UConn guys on the board. 6'11", 265. If you like Neemias Queta, you're going to like Terrace Reed Jr. He might be in that more second round range, so looking at that 40th pick, but you never know. And then Nate Biddle from Oregon, 23 years old, 7 foot tall, 250 pounds. Very good rebounder and rim protector who can also pop out and shoot the 3 a little bit. Of those 3, or of anybody else on the kind of big zone, Brian, who should we be looking out for?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Henri Vessar. I think that, everyone, the secret's out that like the rim shot and the 3-pointer are the 2 most efficient shots in basketball right now. And if you look at the players in college basketball who hit at least 50 dunks this year and 40 3-pointers, and I looked this up just now, there's only 2 high major guys who did that, only 3 total, and he is one of them. He did that at 7 foot, listed at 7 foot, while shooting 42.6% on 3-pointers. That's pretty special. I mean, to have the size to put down, more than 50 dunks, and to have enough shooting range to hit over 43 pointers during the season. Actually, not over. He actually hit exactly 43 pointers, so there's a little bit of manipulation here. But doing that at a 42.6% clip makes him a very unique player. This is not like a world breaking prospect. He's not somebody that I'm going to sit here and like yammer on about for 10 minutes. But I think that, if his role in the NBA is like, hey, like, get some boards because you're 7 feet tall. He was a pretty good defensive rebounder. Get a little bit of playmaking because he can pass a little bit. I think he can do that. Score efficiently. He can do that. We're not going to give you the ball very much, low usage rate. But, when you get the ball, if you're near the rim, dunk it. If you're not near the rim, be in a 5-out offense, stretch the floor a little bit, keep making that shot at the clip you are. The problem, not the problem, but, something notable is that these are both kind of outlier shooting seasons for him. His freshman year, he shot 27% from 3 on only 11 attempts. And then his junior year, he missed a sophomore year, but his junior year, he shot 32% and only made 16 3-pointers. So, to have this jump to making 40 while also shooting 42.6% is an outlier season. And so when you see an outlier, one of the things you like to look at for shooting is your free throw percentage. He shot 61% at the line this year, which is really low. That suggests that his form might not actually be great. Maybe his shot selection was great, but he's a career 3-point shooter, career free throw shooter at 65%, which is not really acceptable, and suggests that he's probably not as good of a shooter as this season suggested, and there might be some regression there. That being said, I still like him. And I think he really allowed for Caleb Wilson, who I think is probably the projected number 4 pick, to play as well as he did this year, because Caleb doesn't really shoot threes. So because you were able to at least have an extra shooter on the floor next to him in the front court, Caleb was able to kind of play more of that 4 role. Even though in the NBA, I think he'll be more of a 5 because it's very rare to have a team with 2 non-shooters on it. So at least Emery gives you an opportunity to have to go 5 out or 4 out, depending on if you have a different non-shooter on the court. But most of the guys in the Celtics can kind of shoot. So yeah, I like his game. Reed has helped himself a ton in the tournament. He has been a rebounding machine. He's he had a game with 30 points, 20 rebounds. Like, that's undeniably amazing.
Pretty good.
Like, in a tournament setting, like that's ridiculous. You can't ignore that. I think he's probably, so I'm going to guess that he'll probably figure out basically what team he wants to go to and kind of figure out how to get there, because he's probably a 2nd round pick right now. And it'll be one of those things where they'll start working on deals where it's like, can you give me a guaranteed contract? No, we can give you a 2-way. Okay, let me see, which team will pick me with a guaranteed contract. So maybe he might go 48 because that team offered him a guaranteed contract, whereas a team at 34 was maybe not. So I think it's going to be a lot of that sort of game. So I think that he's going to figure out probably the best contract situation for him, because he's a senior, he's an adult, he's been around the block, he knows what he's doing. But he'll have an NBA contract next year, and if the Celtics want to be the team to give it to him, like, great. He might have to settle for a 2-way at first and earn his way through camp to be able to get that full guaranteed roster spot. But that's the name of the game for guys who aren't 1st round picks. Like, everybody who's not a 1st round pick kind of has to fight for their spot for the most part. So I would kind of say the same thing about Biddle, who went to my alma mater, Oregon. We had a genuinely awful season at Oregon this year. But I was also very proud of Biddle for not giving up, because he seemed to be the only player who was really trying. I think the rest of the locker room seemed to have given up, and he was still productive all throughout and fought really hard. And he was really good. Every year he played at Oregon, he fought through some injuries, and he was somebody that really in a league that's so defined by NIL and the transfer portal. He went to his hometown school and just stayed it all the way through. You don't see that very often, and I don't know. There's just something like intrinsic and character-wise about that I nod my head and salute to Nate Biddle, who I also think is a good, probably 9th to 11th man in a rotation. But hey, that's a career. And he might be a G League big man, he might be a European big man, he might be, something else. But hey, if he works hard and continues to get better, like, there have been weirder things. There are guys who were not on anyone's top 100 who have carved out real roles for themselves in this league as starters. So Biddle's certainly a guy with his real size. I mean, he is huge. Like, he's a massive presence on the court. He's listed at 7 feet, but and he shot a little bit as well this year too, by the way. He made 36 3-pointers, not at the same efficiency, but he stepped on beyond the line at 7 feet tall, and he also added an incredible shot blocking game to the defensive end of the floor. So Biddle's somebody that I like for sure.
Any other bigs that Celtics fans should take note of, whether it's for that 1st round pick in the 20s or that 2nd round pick at around 40-ish?
Yeah, I like both of the Michigan big men, Demara and Morez Johnson Jr. Morez Johnson's a little bit shorter. Demara is genuinely a giant, like a giant among men. He's 7'3" listed, and he plays in spurts. Like, he's not. I don't think he's going to be a starting NBA player, but if I think the Celtics could use a guy like him, because I think a lot of teams could use a guy like him. Demara, like, last I checked, so this probably changed after yesterday, but through the first 2 games of the tournament, at 7'3", had like the 2nd most assists at the rim of any player in the NCAA tournament. Like, he was passing the ball like very well for someone his size. He had the most field goals made at the rim himself out of anyone in the tournament. he was shooting 10 for 12 at the rim. Like he'd made like everything that was even close to the basket. He's a great shot blocker, and at least in college, at 7'3", like opposing teams didn't even take shots at the rim when he was on the court. Like the frequency that they would even go to try to attack over there was like very low. And I think that any league that has Victor Wembanyama in it could use a player that is 7'3", who's at least able to be coordinated enough to at least exist on a basketball court. So he's somebody that I would keep an eye on for sure. Merez Johnson Jr., one of my bigger, like, it's not sleepers, but players outside the lottery who I like. He's just been super productive. He was great on the FIBA USA circuit for Team USA, or FIBA U19 circuit for Team USA when they won gold. He did the same thing for the U18 FIBA Cup and the America Cup against in Argentina. He's just kind of been a winner, and I think that he's just been productive at every level, and he's been really, really big, impactful player on winning for Michigan, and doesn't have too many deficiencies. So I would definitely keep an eye on him.
Sure. All right, let's keep it moving to the wings. And here we kind of focus mostly on guys who are going to be more available in the second round spot than the first round spot necessarily. There's two that we have highlighted here. One is Milan Momcilovic from Iowa State, 21 years old, 6'8", he's 225. He can shoot. That guy has got an absurd three-point efficiency rate at 49% on 7.6 attempts per game. He does not turn the ball over. He gets the ball up, and he shoots that thing. If you're looking for Sam Hauser, Baylor Shireman type guys, Milan might be what you're looking for, Celtics fans. And then another guy who is a pretty darn good shooter as well. Once again, Justin getting his UConn guys on the board, Alex Caravan, who most mocks project will be available around that second round pick for the Celtics. 23 years old, 6'8". He's 219 pounds. He's a 3-and-D wing with a little bit of passing and some rim protection juice as well. Brian, do either Milan or Caravan make sense for the Celtics in that second round spot?
Yeah, I mean, Milan's been like great as a shooter all season. He's a little bit one-dimensional, to the point where I don't necessarily think, like, I at some points this season I had him as a first-round pick. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. His 3-point percentage has dropped a bit. Like he was shooting, well above that for a lot of the season. Like I think, through January, I'm going to pull up this number so I get it right, just because I remember it being really interesting. Yeah, through January, he was shooting 54% on three-pointers.
That's crazy.
Like it was pretty ridiculous. Like he through the end of February, like it's regressed a lot because he's had some like kind of off nights. But through the end of February, through 3 games on February 28th, he was at 50.9% on threes. So he can shoot for sure. But yeah, again, a huge part of what Iowa State does. But I think that Iowa State is maybe the best defense in college basketball and are able to succeed sort of on that end in spite of him. He's very slow.
I've heard that. Yeah.
And I think that it's a weakness. And I think Baylor Shireman is way more diverse of a skill set than Milan has. So I think that somebody will take that gamble on a guy who can clearly shoot that well. I think that he's definitely able to attract attention and attract real draft stock with numbers like his. But at the same time, like I don't know how much we're really going to hear about him leading up to the draft, just because he is such a one-dimensional type of player.
Sure.
So and then Alex Caravan, he went back to school last year after he was probably able to get drafted, and I think that he's sort of kind of in the exact same position he was in last year as he is this year, like kind of maybe a late first round pick, more likely just a second round pick. Kind of the similar thing we were talking about with Terrace Reed. This guy's a great catch and shoot player. He can get hot from beyond the arc. He's a valuable player for you in a set offense. He can shoot pretty well coming off of a screen. He's a great spot up shooter. He can cut to the basket a little bit. I think that he comes off handoffs every once in a while. You can do a pick and pop with him. Karaban's he's a college vet. He's been around forever. You sort of know what you're getting with him. I don't think anybody's like sprinting to the podium to call his name. But another national championship for him would certainly go a long way.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you are a 3-and-D wing who likes to hustle and curl off screens, there are few better places to do it than under Joe Mazzulla and next to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So there is something to be said there. Any other wings that Celtics fans should have their eyes on, whether it's for that first pick or the second one?
It's a pretty deep class, and honestly, I would really be curious before I start naming names right now to know who decides to go back to school. Because I think a lot of guys who are in this range are going to be really faced with a difficult decision. I mentioned him earlier. The guy that I like is Alan Graves. Just really loved his analytical profile. We'd be hearing a lot more about him. Had Kentucky's first round shot not gone in, that crazy heave forced overtime. Graves had hit a huge 3-pointer right before that. And I think Graves could have been a March Madness, stud if it weren't for that. I think that he's a genuinely, awesome player. And I think he's going to have a really solid NBA career. So that's another guy, though, that I'm like, I don't even know if it's worth talking about him yet, because he could go back to Santa Clara. He could hit the portal. He could test and then go back to school. There's so many ranges of outcomes. Whereas, someone like Alex Karaban, it's like, okay, well, that guy's going pro, so we can talk about him a little bit more.
Sure. And we're going to close things out with the ball handlers, which means it's time for me to talk about the prospect that I have fallen in love with completely, regardless of whether he would fit on the Celtics or not. It's Tyler Tanner time. So I'm just going to throw out there to the dear listeners that I don't watch a ton of college basketball, but I'm kind of nominally a Vandy fan and will pay attention when they are good. And Tyler Tanner absolutely blew me away in the games that he was playing. Now, it should be noted, Tyler Tanner is very small. He's only 6 feet tall, and he's pretty skinny at 175 pounds. Skinnier than, I don't know, maybe some other 6 foot tall podcast hosts or things of that nature. But what he lacks in size, he makes up for in elite scoring. He is also an outstanding defender for his size, averaging nearly 2.4 steals a game at 6 feet tall, which is crazy. He gets to the line. He doesn't turn the ball over. He shoots the three at a pretty decent clip. He can score in a variety of ways. If you like Peyton Pritchard's game, you might like Tyler Tanner's game. And Bryan, I need you to convince me why Brad Stevens shouldn't just pick Tyler Tanner because it would make me happy at 27.
Tyler Tanner could go back to school. That's sort of one of the things. Yeah. But I will say to the reasons that you do like him, though, his name is DBC Jason. He does some stat queries on his Twitter, and I saw today he posted one that was basically based on your stats. What's a typical player like you play like? So Nate Ament, for example, on Tennessee plays about 2 or 3 inches shorter than what he's actually listed at 6'10", because he doesn't really dunk the ball. Tyler Tanner had the biggest delta between what he plays like his height at versus what his actual listed height at is. He's listed at 6 feet, but according to this stat, he plays like he's 6'6", and I think that's true.
You're speaking my language.
I think it's very true that at the end of the day, you are what you play like, and if you're 6'7" with a 46-inch vertical, but you never dunk in games, I don't care. you're not a dunker. Like, oh, it's awesome that you're tall and that you can throw it down, but your verticality is kind of useless. Tyler Tanner, I do have as a first round pick right now. I do think he's within 1 or 2 picks of that Celtics range, and his defense is fantastic. He plays a lot bigger than he is. He's a pretty solid rebounder. He's a good playmaker, one of the best. And I think, yeah, I mean, if we saw this on a guy who was even 6'2", 6'3", we'd be talking about a lottery player. It's just a lot of bias against 6-foot players, but hey, there have been 6-foot players to make it work in the league before. Chris Paul did it. Steve Nash did it. It's not impossible. I think a lot of those guys would, probably get hunted on defense even more so now in today's NBA. But I think that Tyler Tanner is somebody who will play in the NBA. I mean, Jose Alvarado, he's better than Jose Alvarado. Jose Alvarado gets minutes. I think he's a better defender by a lot than Peyton Pritchard.
Wow.
Like I genuinely do. And I think he's in some ways a better athlete as well. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Tyler Tanner's measurements and athletic testing looks like at the combine, because he'll be one of my bigger curiosities, because if he's got a big wingspan, it's maybe less of a big deal. If he's got a crazy verticality, then it's like, well, he can get up and block some shots because he's able to jump so high. Yep. However, if he measures at 5'10" without shoes, then we're not really talking about a guy here. Like it, and that's the thing. That's, these guys' shoes are coming off, and they're putting them on that thing, and they're going to measure them. So.
Well, you've done very little to convince me that Brad Stevens shouldn't take Tyler Tanner.
I like Tyler Tanner. I think that Joe Mazzulla would like Tyler Tanner. I think that Joe Mazzulla would love Tyler Tanner.
Would love Tyler Tanner. I think that would be an awesome fit. And I think it's process.
Yeah, I think in that range, it's a perfectly reasonable pick. I don't think that I need to talk you off a ledge, because I think that it's a good ledge. I think it's a safe ledge. I think it's a ledge with a diving board and a lifeguard.
I love this. And I'm obsessed with the idea of a Peyton Pritchard, Tyler Tanner guards pick and pop situation. That just seems like it would be so much
terrifying.
Terrifying. All right. A couple more guards that we should mention that we have highlighted here. Sergio De La Rea, playing in Valencia, 20 years old, 6'6", 198 pounds. Very good passer, can shoot, can rebound, does foul a lot, turns the ball over a decent amount. And then Paul McNeil, Jr. of North Carolina State, 20 years old, 6'5", 190 pounds, very efficient from deep at 42%, 7.2 attempts per game, very low turnovers. Those are other ball handlers that we have noted here. So you can talk about them or any other ball handlers that you would like to mention here, Brian, and then we'll close things out.
Yeah, I mean, McNeil is somebody who North Carolina State had a bit of a run, and so he was a bit more of a study of a prospect during that range. He's sort of fallen off a little bit with NC State having the weird season they did, with Will Wade leaving after 1 year to go back to LSU. He's 6'5". He's young for his. I mean, he's 20 years old at the same age as some of the freshmen, so he's young for a sophomore. His just to go back to what we were saying earlier though about Darius Acuff, 42.7% from three is great. He also has a negative defensive box plus minus. I tend to avoid players with a negative defensive box plus minus. And his assist percentage is basically the same as his turnover percentage. So that's not great for a guy you want as a guy handling the ball. I mean, his assist percentage as a freshman was over 20, and then this year it was 5%. So that's a significant decrease on as a playmaker. So I'm not really a huge McNeil guy, but 6'5", able to handle the rock. You've got something. I think that he's at least at least somebody to keep an eye on. But I think he's probably more of a late second round pick right now, or in that second round pick range. Even though he is pretty efficient. But he's not running pick and roll a ton. I think he ran, when he finished like maybe his pick and roll frequency was pretty low this year. He's more of an off ball guard, I would say, spot ups, off ball screens, things like that, than he is running the offense. And yeah, I haven't really been tracking Sergio Delaria as much as I would like to this year, just because this year in general, we've had so many of the international players just playing in the NCAA that it's so much easier to just lose track of NCAA players. But I saw he scored 17 off the bench last week, which is great. There are some games where he goes, fully scoreless, which is less great. But he's getting real minutes playing overseas in Spain, and he's been a prospect that we've been kind of tracking for a while now, and I think can add some pretty real versatility. But he's currently listed at 6'5", 175, which is crazy. That's pretty scary skinny there. So he could probably get thrown around a little bit in the NBA if he doesn't put on more size. So hopefully he weighs up a little bit more.
It's true. Although Brad Stevens does like long, tall, international skinny guards. See Hugo Gonzalez. All right, we're going to close things out for you.
One note on Bryan. Hugo Gonzalez. He was teammates with Ade Mara on the on Spain on a Spain team that won a gold medal for the U19s. And so there is some interesting chemistry there between Gonzalez and Mara, because they both made that U19 tournament all starting five, like the all-star team, basically all NBA version of that for that tournament together for that Spain team a couple years ago.
Very interesting. Something to consider for Brad and company. We have much more to consider on the draft and the Celtics going forward, but y'all got to get out of here. So Bryan, we're going to close things out with this. First off, where can we find your work?
You can find it for draft coverage at USA Today. And for everything else, I'm at FTW for the win, which is ftw.usatoday.com. So the draft stuff is on USA Today directly, and everything else is on For the Win.
Nice. Thank you, Bryan. All right. We'll close things out as we always do with something to remember or something to forget. So it can be from life, basketball, NCAA tournament, Boston Celtics, NBA, whatever. Justin and I will model, and then you'll get the last word, Bryan.
I'll go first. I'm going to remember to schedule my time better at this time of year, because I always do a terrible, terrible job of juggling everything that's going on between the NCAA tournament and trying to keep track of college prospects, checking the defensive skills of these players, and, things like eating, sleeping, those kinds of things. So, yeah, definitely going to work on my time management skills with a focus on this time of the year.
I'm going to remember that despite the March Madness, despite the NBA going charging forward into the playoffs, there is another cool sports thing that is happening, folks. That's right. Baseball season is back, and the Red Sox are once again on the prowl. Bryan, I see you with the Mets hat. I'm going to be going to plenty of baseball games this year. I am a Red Sox fan first, a Mets fan as I live in New York, and will never support the New York Yankees under any circumstances. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of baseball this year. Bryan, you get the last word, something to remember or something to forget.
Yeah, well, this is both to remember and to forget. The Oregon 2017 basketball team that made the Final Four with Peyton Pritchard was such an awesome team. Pritchard was a freshman at the time. That Ducks team would have won the championship, would have been the first championship in program history since the first ever NCAA tournament. We won the first one, there's not won one since. And we would have won it were it not for Chris Boucher tearing his ACL during the Pac-12 tournament. I
was going to ask if he was on that.
Yeah. If Boucher had not torn his ACL, that team would have gone the distance. We had Jordan Bell, we had Peyton Pritchard, we had a lot of really talented players in that roster.
Awesome that year.
he was really good. We had some real talent. Unfortunately, lost to North Carolina in a game that I was at in Phoenix. So both remembering that really fun roster because we beat Kansas, number 3 Kansas, to get there. That was Andrew Wiggins' Kansas team. But then we lost in the lost in that Final Four game that I was at in Arizona, and it was tough. Jordan Bell didn't box out in a rebound, and it really ended our season. So remembering and forgetting.
Brutal. Well, tough way to close it out. But Bryan, thank you for joining us to break down the draft, the Celtics position in it, the March Madness of it all. I'm going to close things out by myself, just going over the news really quickly into the void while JQ goes and tries to eat some food and keep himself alive. But we'll come back for the news after a short break. All right, we're going to close things out with the news of the day for the Boston Celtics. Justin is back, and I am also back. Thank you, Bryan, for coming on for our draft discussion. Let's just rip through this real quick. So the last time that we spoke, the Boston Celtics had 3 games ahead of them against the Memphis Grizzlies, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And since then, they gutted out a close win at Memphis, a game that was probably more competitive than I think you or I thought it was going to be. The Celtics were pretty much asleep for the entirety of the game up until midway through the fourth quarter when they gutted it out. Memphis continues its tanking ways, and the Celtics added another win to the win column. And then they took on the Minnesota Timberwolves in a 102-92, and a loss that, frankly, it was not as close as the score would indicate. The Celtics were pretty firmly out of this game kind of right at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum had a very inefficient game, 6 of 17, 2 of 7 from deep, and received a little bit of, I don't know if it was heat, but pumping the brakes after a fairly strong start in his return from injury. Naz Reid was basically unstoppable in the fourth quarter of this game. The Celtics had a lot of late game turnovers. The offense really got bogged down. And it's fair to say that they did not look very good in this game. I have to wonder if maybe there was a little bit of taking foot off the gas in anticipation of their next matchup, a really big game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Justin, I'm not sure that the score is correct that you have written down here. Can we double check that?
It was 110-119, excuse me.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The Boston Celtics gutted out a really impressive win, arguably their best win of the season against a fully healthy Oklahoma City Thunder squad. The Thunder, of course, the number 1 seed in the NBA, or I guess in the Western Conference at least, and last year's champs. Highly anticipated matchup, a rematch against a brutally close loss that the Celtics lost a few weeks prior in Oklahoma City by 1 possession. This time the Celtics come out on top in resounding fashion, many saying it's their best win of the year. Jason Tatum played a lot of minutes, and he was very effective in those minutes. Jaylen Brown had a gem of a game on his 2-way impact and closing late, leading the Celtics offense down the stretch. Baylor Shireman played maybe the best all-around game that I've seen him play in the NBA. In general, this was an outstanding win, a possible finals preview. Let's just kind of really quickly go around, break this down. All right, let's be real. We're not going to talk about the Memphis or the Minnesota game because
I think your point about them maybe looking past it, even if they weren't like taking the game off on the court per se consciously, I do feel like that there was something of that going on.
But the real name of the game, the highlight to this story is this win over the Thunder, and that's the main thing that we should talk about here. What did you see in that game from the Celtics, from the Thunder? Take it away.
Oh boy. As has been pointed out in a lot of places, they played a lot of players, really too many players for a playoff rotation. I don't expect to see all those guys on the floor if we do face them in the postseason. That said, if we do see them in the postseason, that's going to be a great end to a season nobody really thought was going to amount to very much other than, the Celtics players themselves. I am a lot less afraid of this version of the Thunder, particularly considering that they were basically fully healthy. They might look better once they have more of a chance to play together. But that said, I did not see anything that was all that overwhelming as has been the case in the past. There was a couple of moments early in the game where it looked like things might get out of control. But between like good timeouts from Joe and good game planning to stop it, the Celtics got back in. Well, I won't say control, but got back in a good competitive position, and then closed it out late, which was everything you want to see in that kind of a game. Besides that, the only other thing that I think is particularly notable is, I mean, it could spark back up at any time. But as I have hinted at in prior episodes, I think that the referee Jaylen Brown war is at least cooled off, if not over. Our man was complimenting the refereeing in that game, which is, understandable. Seeing we got the first example of the Jaylen Brown who said, maybe I need to do a little of the not basketball stuff that SGA does. Well, he did that to SGA. Huge shit-eating grin on his face, as was on mine, just to see that turned around on them. Yes, please do more of that. Not all the time. It's not basketball. You are correct. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do,
Well, he did what he did to the tune of 12 of 14 from the free throw line and a solid 31-point outing to go with 8 rebounds and 8 assists. The turnovers are still a little bit of a bugaboo for the Jays. They had 10 apiece between the two of them. But overall, it was a very strong game from Jaylen and Jason, something that he broke down a little bit more in his Twitch stream after the game. It's the best win of the season, I think, in many respects. A pretty complete game all around, very well-balanced effort. Pretty much everybody who played contributed in some meaningful sense. Not a lot of Hugo Gonzalez in this matchup, and I don't imagine he'll play a ton in the finals except for spot minutes, if indeed this is the finals matchup to pass. But the 8-man rotation of Tatum, Hauser, Cato, White, Brown, Garza, Pritchard, and Shireman held it down against what many consider to be the best team in the league and beat an MVP favorite, or at least co-favorite, in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's not nothing as far as the MVP race. I think it's probably a little late in the game for Jaylen Brown to win it, but it's certainly not nothing. We will be monitoring, when it comes to Jaylen Brown, his status as far as what he is looking like with a, dare I say it, Achilles tendonitis that he's currently sitting against tonight's game against the Atlanta Hawks for.
Officially calf tightness, but we know what that can be. So, yeah.
I think officially Achilles tendonitis, as is listed on the latest injury report. Now,
really? Earlier today it wasn't.
Yeah. Joe Mazzulla is going to, he is saying it's day to day. And Daniel Danabedian is on the scene, our co-host, who's currently busy getting prepped for that game at TD Garden. But Joe Mazzulla did say it's day to day, so maybe it's just rest. But it's not awesome. Not loving the A word coming back for any Celtics players, particularly high usage forwards who are in all NBA discussions. And then let's see. So anything else to talk about these games? I guess we should talk about what this does for the standings when it comes to the Boston Celtics. They are in a pitched battle with the New York Knicks. They're only one game ahead of them in the standings right now. New York did lose last night to the dreaded Charlotte Hornets, who continue to make waves as the most dangerous play-in team that we've ever seen. But the Knicks are one game back. They do hold the tiebreaker against the Celtics. And even though the Celtics will play the Knicks one more time, regardless of whether they win or lose that game, the Knicks will hold the tiebreaker, as Brian Scalabrine explained, because they have a better Atlantic Division record than the Celtics. And the Celtics will not be able to catch them in that regard, as the Celtics, I believe, are pretty much done playing the Atlantic Division outside of that Knicks game. With that being said, the Celtics will need to have a better record than the Knicks if they want to hold on to this 2 seed. Looking at that schedule, first off, they have this matchup against the red-hot Atlanta Hawks, who are 14-1 in their last 15 games. Inarguably, I think, the hottest team in the NBA right now, which is kind of crazy, considering where they were prior to the dealing of Trae Young. So they got a matchup with the Hawks tonight with no Jaylen Brown, and then they have a back-to-back against the Hornets and the Hawks again Sunday and Monday. That finishes off what I believe is they have one more back-to-back this year. It's the Knicks, and then they play the lowly tanking Pelicans after that on the penultimate game of the season. They also have matchups in April with Miami, Milwaukee. They do have a Toronto matchup, so one more Atlantic Division game, and the Hornets again, as well as the Orlando Magic to close the season. Meanwhile, just pulling up the Knicks schedule, the Knicks have to play the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday, and then they have a date with the Rockets, who are grappling for playoff positioning in the West, the lowly Grizzlies and the lowly Bulls, both of whom are pretty much finished for the season. And then they take on the aforementioned surging Hawks, the Boston Celtics, the Toronto Raptors, who will still have something to play for, and the Charlotte Hornets to close out the year. So schedule-wise, honestly, we're looking pretty similar as far as a few hard games with a few easy ones mixed in. The Celtics do have that one game cushion, but the Knicks can take that away if they beat the Celtics in their head-to-head matchup on April 9th. What do we think? How likely is it that Boston can hold on to this 2 seed here?
I mean, honestly, I am at this point, particularly after the news regarding Jalen, much more concerned with player health. This would not be a game that you would really want to see the Celtics sitting Jalen from just a win-loss perspective, given what you pointed out about the Hawks. But I mean, we do not want to do this next year again and having like another not gap year, but the roles reversed. Exactly. Right. So I'm a lot more concerned with getting plenty of rest in. I mean, like you can rest at that Bucks game, but other than that, none of the games that are remaining on Boston's schedule are like definite gimme. Like this is a good place to rest your player. So for me, I don't think it's that big of a difference between whether they fall to the 3 seed in terms of who they'll be playing. There are potentially likely problematic players coming out. I mean, like Charlotte, for example, like I don't care what anyone says. I understand there's some very good arguments made by people like John Corrales that there's exploitable weaknesses on that roster, but they're also the kind of team that can like smack you in the face. All that series we had in like, I think it was like 2000. I don't even remember when it was, but versus the Chicago Bulls when Dwayne Wade was still playing for them and Rondo was playing for them. I forget what year that was, but anyway, they could be that kind of a team where they smack you so hard early that you kind of have to dig your way out of a hole for the rest of the entire series. I'm pretty sure that Boston can beat them, but other than that, like for me, the rest of the schedule is all about health at this point more than anything.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, the Hornets are dangerous. Con Knippel put it to the Knicks last night with 26 points on 9 of 14 shooting. So all of these teams, for the most part, are fairly dangerous with, a couple of exceptions. It's not like the Celtics can really afford to take these games off. But to your point, I do think health is going to be a bigger factor. And as we know from last year, having the higher seed does not necessarily mean you are going to win the series. See the Celtics-Knicks series from last year. So I do think health is more important, but it's always nice to have home court, especially when, the Pistons are, while they are going to hold on to the 1 seed in all likelihood, the Cade Cunningham injury is quite serious and things are very much up in the air for Detroit right now. We will close out the news with this. Charles Bassey has returned to the Celtics to another 10-day contract. So basically we have 10 days and then we can choose to either convert Charles Bassey or fill a roster spot with somebody. What do we think is going to happen?
They're going to wait till the end of the season and sign Ron Harper Jr. because I think if we would have seen something that would put him above what Ron Harper has been doing, just a little additional context, they are doing all of this to try to stay out of the luxury tax while also not running afoul of the minimum players on the roster rules in the NBA. And if we had seen something pretty impressive in the limited run that we saw from Charles Bassey, or really anything before Summer League, then I think there would be at least a chance. But I'm fully expecting there's going to be Ron Harper or maybe someone that we just have absolutely no idea from overseas or something like that. But I think probably Ron Harper.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though, but they could, in theory, sign both Bassey and Harper and still stay under the luxury tax as long as they sign Bassey after this next 10 day. Is that correct?
I think so, though. I think that they would have to. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say how many roster spots there are. Yeah, I think it's technically possible that they could do that, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head.
I think if they let Bassie play out the rest of this 10-day and then convert him to a standard contract and then sign Ron Harper on the last day of the season, there is a way that they can have both of them on their playoff roster and still stay under the luxury tax, which I expect is probably what's going to happen if they can pull that off. But we'll see.
I think they might need, I could be wrong on this too, but I think they might need to let go of Shoga, which they could then put him back in as a two-way. So it's definitely possible, even if that is the case. But yeah, it's a juggling act.
For sure. And of course, it has to be said, I don't think we're expecting Charles Bassie to play in the playoffs or Ron Harper Jr. that much for that matter. If those guys are seeing the floor, something has gone quite wrong for the Boston Celtics. So nice story. Happy for Charles Bassie. Liked him in Summer League. Hopefully he can stick around. But if not, it's good to see him back on the court in some capacity. And I guess we should close with this. We talked a lot about the NBA's anti-tanking measures at the first chunk of our pod, but we should close things off with another significant NBA development. Expansion is happening. That's going down. It's been approved by the Board of Governors. It does not necessarily mean it's happening right now, but we are now in pretty firmly in the place with a unanimous approval from the Board of Governors that NBA expansion specifically for Las Vegas and for Seattle is very much on the table. They will be accepting bids. Bids are going to be submitted because there are still people that want to own NBA teams, actually. And that is almost certainly going to happen. We just don't know who's going to be buying them at this point. So with that in mind, I guess I'm curious, First off, we should mention apologies to JQ, who will be going without another NBA team in Mexico City. So sorry. Vegas is not that far if you want to make a day trip out of it. I don't know. But so
still technically Mexico.
I guess we'll close with this. With all of the stuff that's happening with the lottery and with the draft and with the new CBA, why is now the time to bring back the Supersonics and to expand to Las Vegas for the NBA? Why are they so enthusiastic about this?
Money.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because the estimated valuation of these two teams is going to be in the $7 billion range.
Or more.
That's what they're projecting, at least. Or more, which is more than the Lakers went for. It's more than the Celtics went for. It would be more than any other NBA team in history would be selling for. This is a big, old, fat check to the NBA that can be divvied up amongst the other owners. Now, will this trigger an expansion draft? Yes. Will that result in some of our faves from the Boston Celtics potentially not being Boston Celtics anymore? Quite
Maybe.
Possibly. We will have to see. I am admittedly a little worried about whether Jordan Walsh is going to be on the team in a few years, but that's a TBD. I like Jordan Walsh. I think he's good. I also think that whoever the Vegas and Seattle teams are being run by will probably know that Jordan Walsh is good, and we'll be looking at that. But TBD. There's not too much else that we can say about it right now because we frankly don't know. I guess I'm curious, and we'll close things out here. What do you think this is going to look like combining this with lottery reform? How is this going to affect the NBA kind of in the immediate future, thinking about these two potentially significant reforms?
Oh, boy. I mean, for a lot of teams, it's going to be another avenue to reshape their roster by either bribing one of these new teams to take a particular player or to not take other particular players. So there's that to be thinking about. And then there's always the specter of the LIV model with golf. One of the reasons why NBA Europe is a thing is because the NBA is trying to saturate the market with its footprint. It's already got Basketball Africa League up and running, and Europe is one of the other really the most viable field, I think, to create an NBA-backed league. And I think that expansion plays a role in that they don't want to be in a situation where money that can be coming into the league ecosphere ends up someplace else, just for the fact that the weaker that the league is compared to incredibly wealthy national monetary funds, investment funds, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and like from like the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. Like the reason why we're hearing the partnership of Dubai with the NBA is because it's better for the NBA to work with these people to expand and involve them in areas where, for example, like in the NBA, they cannot participate beyond I think 15% ownership of a league. But sovereign wealth funds, that was what I was looking for. But in these other leagues, they don't exist yet. So they could make those rules so they could, right? And let that be a sandbox to see how it would work in the NBA. So you're right to point out that all of these things are connected and probably in ways that we aren't even predicting yet. So just some stuff to watch out for.
Yeah. A lot of change coming, and a lot of different teams and players will be affected. For what it's worth, the Oklahoma City Thunder, it seems like, are going to give back the Seattle history to Seattle, which could be interesting could be an interesting conversation for some other teams. I'll just leave it at that. But that's neither here nor there. We will keep it moving, and we will keep you updated as the league changes both this year and in years future on future episodes of Havlicek Stole the Pod.